Hi, I'm Nate. My conscience has been constantly bothering me for almost a year. It's like a huge rock that I have to carry. The thing is, I've ruined my teacher's life. And now she has to take care of her child alone. I'm so sorry I did this, and I want to confess to you. Okay, let's start from the beginning. I was 17 years old, and I just moved with my family to another city. I'll be honest, I was a little afraid of this. I had to say goodbye to all my friends that I had known for so long and meet a lot of new people. That's what scared me the most. I can't call myself a sociable person. I'm an introvert, and making connections with other people was not my specialty. But nevertheless, I wanted my new classmates to treat me well, and this desire led to some terrible consequences. We had a French teacher, Miss Alice Dunn, who was incredibly attractive. She could have easily been on the cover of a magazine, but instead, she was working at our school. Needless to say, all the boys at school just swooned at the sight of her. I even heard a rumor that one guy stayed after class one day and dared to ask her out for coffee. As far as I know, he came out of the classroom pale, and all the other guys laughed at him for a long time. This may sound strange, but I was very lucky that my French language skills were so bad. I'll explain. The thing is, Miss Dunn knew I was in trouble and paid more attention to me. I was always very shy and blushed like a tomato when I talked to her, but believe me, deep down, I was just glowing with happiness. A couple of times, she'd ask me to stay after class, and we'd talk in private. Of course, it was a conversation about studying, but still, all my classmates envied me. I must say, it gave me a little bit of pleasure, and I was even happier when Miss Dunn offered me her services as a French tutor. I did not hesitate for a second and accepted the offer. Sometimes she came to my house, sometimes we had classes at her house. We practiced a few times a week, and everything was just fine. Oh, she also asked me not to tell anyone about it, because she didn't know how the school's administrators would react to her freelance work. My best and only friend Rick was at my house one day. Sometimes we would get together to play Xbox or watch a movie. That day, our tense Fortnite round was broken by the sound of the doorbell. And I was very surprised when I opened the door, because it was Miss Dunn. I had completely forgotten that we had a session that day. She smiled and came inside, and then she saw Rick. There was a very awkward pause. I quickly hinted to my friend that he should go home, and apologized to Miss Dunn for having forgotten our lesson. Everything was okay. She just asked me to tell Rick not to tell anyone our secret, and so I did. But he didn't seem to listen to me. The next day, when I got to school and went to my locker, all the guys in our class crowded around me. They were all in a good mood, and they started making jokes about me, like I was trying to hit on Miss Dunn by taking these extra lessons. All the guys were laughing at me, and I felt very uncomfortable. I didn't want to be the laughing stock for my classmates, so at one point, I said that I had something going on with our teacher. For a few seconds, all the guys just stared at me in a daze. They certainly didn't see that coming. Then I came up with a couple of convincing details for my lie, and in a second, the crowd erupted with a loud, "Wow!" They all high-fived me and told me I was cool. It looked like I had really become cool in their eyes, and I was happy with that. But a week later, I regretted what I had said. I had no idea that rumors could spread so quickly. After a couple of days, I just walked down the hallway at school, and I noticed that people were looking at me strangely. Guys mostly winked at me and smiled, and girls usually turned away from me. Looks like the whole school found out I was having an affair with Miss Dunn. Wait, I need to clarify. A fake affair. Naturally, these rumors reached the school authorities, and soon the principal called me into his office. The conversation was short and hard. He looked at me with his stern gaze and asked if people were telling the truth about me. At that moment, I was faced with a choice. I could say I lied, and then the whole school would think I was a loser. Or I could say it was true, and then Miss Dunn would be in trouble. I couldn't have survived such a disgrace at school. After that, I would have just never left my house again. So, I said it was true. This was a gross violation of teacher ethics. And the very next day, Miss Dunn was fired. I saw her in the parking lot, putting her stuff in her car. I ran up to her and started begging for forgiveness, but she wouldn't listen to me. She was upset and angry at the same time. She just yelled at me and told me to go away. I didn't expect for it to turn out like this, and I was very sorry. I didn't know what was going on with Miss Dunn, and I was just trying to move on, but constantly struggling with my conscience. I would have liked to have gone back in time and changed everything, but that was impossible. I spent several months in mental agony, and soon it was time for graduation. We had a prom planned and a party after that, but I wasn't in the mood for fun. I just sat there and watched everyone dance and enjoy life. At some point, I decided to go home and wanted to say goodbye to the guys. But as I approached them, I overheard their conversation. They were discussing me and Miss Dunn, and one of them was saying dirty things about her. I was so angry at that moment that I started screaming and running toward him. Thank God the guys managed to pull us apart, and we avoided an actual fight. But at that moment, I realized that I was concerned about her honor. More than that, I was concerned about her. I think I fell in love with her. Not the way that other guys in our class did. I mean, in a more emotional way. But there was nothing I could do about it. About a year had passed. I went to college in another city, and I dreamed of becoming a lawyer. But every time, my fantasies of a happy life were interrupted by the dark thoughts that my conscience threw at me. Yes, I was still thinking about Alice. At one point, I couldn't bear the torment of my conscience any longer, and I decided to visit my former teacher while I was on a break back home. And what I saw shocked me. I went to her house, and it took a long time to gather my strength and knock on her door. I finally did it. But the door wasn't opened by the Miss Dunn that I remember. To be more precise, it was her. But she looked very different. Crumpled, stretched out clothing, disheveled hair, bags under her eyes. All her beauty was gone. I stood in a stupor for a few seconds, and we looked into each other's eyes. This terrible pause was interrupted by a sharp cry from a child. Then she told me to get out and close the door. But I couldn't just leave. So I went inside, and I saw her by the baby's crib. I said I wanted to help her. And then she burst into tears, started shouting, and blurted out all the pain that had been sitting inside her this whole time. It turns out that shortly before she was fired, she found out that she was pregnant. But after the scandal at school, she had a lot of fights with her husband. And eventually, they divorced. Now, she was all alone. My God, what had I done? My lies made her life a living hell. She didn't have a job. Her husband's alimony was barely enough to support her. And she had to take care of their child alone. And all this happened because of me. I was so ashamed that I just wanted to hide from the whole world. But this time, I had to overcome my insecurities and be strong to help her survive. So I promised myself that I would correct my mistake and make up for all the damage I had done to her. I needed a full-time job to do this, and maybe more than one. So I had to take a gap year until I could sort out all these issues. Yes, this decision put my future at risk, and my parents were very mad about my decision, but it was a price I had to pay. I got a job as a sales consultant in a hardware store, and also worked part-time on small copywriting orders at night. It was very difficult, but I spared no effort. When I got my first paycheck, I paid Alice another visit. At first, she didn't want to accept help from me, but it seemed like she had no choice. I also found a job for Alice. It was as a French translator, and it was a great job because she could work from home and spend time with the baby. Our relationship has become warmer, and I have hope that she'll be able to forgive me for what I did. Things have begun to get better, and I've begun to notice how her beauty is returning to her. Oh, she's also definitely starting to come out of her depression, and she's spending more time on herself. Once, I was even able to persuade her to go for a walk with me. Now, I didn't hint at anything, but I have a burning love for her inside me, and I was just happy to be around her. Now, I've put aside my dream of becoming a lawyer for now. All I want to do is gain Alice's trust, and maybe ask her out one day. Yeah, maybe it's impossible, but I will do everything to make this dream come true.